Welcome, I'm Todd Raffel with ERE Media. If you don't know us and you're watching this video embedded somewhere else, we are at ere.net, in addition to some other domains like tlnt.com and sourcecon.com, ERE Media, ere.net. And I'm here with Maury Hanigan, CEO of Spark, spelled with a C on the end, not a K. And if you don't know it, you might know it as MatchClick, its previous name. We're talking about diversity. Now, Maury had an interesting blog post the other day on TechCrunch. She was talking about companies that have stock photos and other kinds of illustrations of diversity. They show their companies are diverse through the typical photos and other materials with a rainbow of races and genders, all holding hands on a corporate career website or other materials. But oftentimes, sometimes, the companies are not actually diverse. They just picked out a photo or something else. So is that okay? Is that bad? What do you think about that?
Well, I think it's hard for companies. There are companies who want to be genuine, who want to be honest with potential employees. They don't want to perpetrate a fraud. They don't want to say, hey, we're a wildly diverse company, and then have candidates show up and look around and realize that the place is full of white males and nothing but. On the other hand, they don't want to show the company as all white male because that's very off-putting. If you're a female, if you're someone of color, you want to see that there are people like you who are succeeding and thriving in that environment. So, we can be really critical of the stock photos, and I'll admit I'm one of the people who are very critical of the stock photos. I think you can walk around some career fairs and see the same people on multiple career fair booths. Right. Under the headline, meet our employees. Well, they're on 4 different career fair booths. So it's bad from the start. So it's hard. There are no really simple, easy answers here. But you don't want to lie to candidates. You don't want to be showing them employees that aren't your employees. So what it means is you've got to work really hard at this one. You have to be able to, first of all, not rely on one photo on your website to represent all of your organization. The technology has made it so easy that you can have employee-generated videos. You can include them in your job descriptions. There are lots of ways that you can give a real breadth of your employees visibility and a voice. So you don't have to rely on one photo or one, we're not like in the back of the days of print where you had one brochure and you had to pick a photo. Technology has really made it much easier to represent everybody, and that includes the white males. I mean, we have some research that says that women aren't necessarily adverse to going to work for men, but they want to make sure the man they're going to work for isn't a monster. So show the boss as a perfectly reasonable professional human being, and the same thing minority to majority. It's not just that only black people work for a black boss. That's not the case at all. But they want to see that they're going to be surrounded by people who will, encourage them, will be role models, will be invested in their development to do all the things that a good boss does. So to the extent that you can give visibility and give life to those folks, then you're well on your way to winning the conundrum.
There was another blog post I read recently, which I thought was really interesting and convincing, to be honest. And the blog post was it was essentially why Google can't attract minorities enough and why it won't be able to attract enough minorities. Google was just one example. And the reason the person gave was because of the location, because it's in Mountain View. The person who wrote the blog post was, I believe he was Jamaican, and he was saying that when minorities see a location, whether they visit it or they know people there, or they read about it, they hear about it, they see photos, videos, and there aren't many people who look like them, they're turned off. And when there's not enough restaurants they're used to going to, they may be turned off. The person who wrote the blog post was also giving an example of even barbershops, saying there aren't that many, some people find there aren't many places to have their hair cut in a given area that they're used to having their haircut at. So the person was saying that it comes down to location, that if companies would be more open to all kinds of other arrangements, whether it's telecommuting and satellite offices and maybe opening up in other cities and whatever it might be, it actually is a location issue. What do you think about that?
Yes and no. It's one of the factors. We saw years ago Corning, New York, which was a predominantly, almost exclusively white metropolis. They recognized that the problem with the barbershop. So what they did is they subsidized a barbershop to make sure it stayed in business, because they understood the diverse employees they were bringing in weren't enough to constitute a thriving business. So there are things you can do, but trying to find the perfectly diverse location isn't necessarily going to solve all your diversity problems. I'm not even sure it's going to solve all of them. Yes, you need to be aware of the fact that people don't want to be isolated. I mean, for anyone, think about going to work in some town in China where you're the only non-Chinese speaking person. That would feel very alienating. And it's a real thing, and you need to be aware of that. But whether you're looking at women or minorities or, any subsegment of the professional population, there are a whole list of things that go into their decision to accept or not accept a job. And if the opportunity is good and the training is good and, all the other pieces make sense, yes, location's one of them. There's no doubt about it. And with different individuals, it can be more or less important. For some people, it's wildly important. For other people, they could care less. So I think companies need to be mindful of the community that people will be part of. But it's not realistic for anyone in talent acquisition to say, hey, we're going to pick up our headquarters and move, 90 miles south because there's better, population density there of minorities that we want to recruit. So the piece they need to look at is, what can they do to create affiliate groups to have people not become isolated so that they can thrive socially as well as professionally? And it's the reason this isn't a really simple answer. It's not like, here are 3 things to solve your diversity problems. There aren't simple, easy things. These are complex problems, and there are people who are thoughtful about it, who really want to get it right, who this whole idea of honest diversity, portraying things honestly without being deceptive but still being welcoming. They're complex problems, and I really applaud the tech companies on the West Coast who have started to publish their diversity stats, because they're saying we're willing to be held accountable. Look, we're not where we want to be. This isn't great. It's not glamorous. But we need to have an open conversation about this and stop pretending that everything's fine. It's not about running around to, some of the historically black schools and making a presentation there and saying, oh, we're doing everything we can. There are actually more black students at UMichigan than there are at most of the historically black schools. So you can do things for show, or you can really get serious about wanting to reach out and genuinely addressing some of the issues. Location's one, that's a really tough one to move your physical location, but that doesn't mean you can't do other things. Sponsoring employees to go to conferences where, they'll be able to build bigger networks and so forth. There are lots of ways that you can address this without having to abandon your headquarters and go to some other part of the country.
And in fairness, I wasn't suggesting that this person suggested that was the answer, that somehow Google needs to move their headquarters away from Mountain View. That wasn't necessarily their point. But their point was that this was an overlooked variable, an overlooked factor in finding minorities and others, is people seeing the city in one form or another, online or in person, and feeling like it's not the place for them. Not just that they expected headquarters to be moved to them. Anyhow, very well said, both points, both on the first thing we talked about with the stock photo and on this location thing. Thank you again, Maury Hanigan, CEO of Spark.